Welcome everybody to Living Consciously TV, coming to you live from our Denver, Colorado studios and the beautiful Rocky Mountains right behind me. And we are, of course, as always, streaming live on YouTube Live, on YouTube Red, and at ConsciousRevolutionMedia.com. I'm your host and also your moderator, Coach Steve Toth. And our theme this evening is We and the Universe Are One. I can't wait for this theme to unfold. So before it does, I would like to introduce our guest cast, Jeffrey Fidel, MD. Welcome to the show, Jeffrey.
Thank you, Steve, for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for being here, and he's joining us from Disney World.
Close enough.
Wow.
What better place? And since that's what I say humanity is anyway, it's Disney World. All these rides we're on. All right, so, and let me introduce the rest of the cast. On the very left, it could be, depending on where you're watching from, on your right, would be Glinda Lee-Hoffmann. Welcome to the show.
Hi, everyone.
Great to have you. Love your background. And next to her happens to be Jamie Lerner. She's joining us from that city that never stops being windy. Welcome to the show.
Hello. It's great to be here.
It's good to have you. And last but not least, we have Linda Dyer, and she's joining us from that place where the kangaroos never stop jumping around and roaming. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Very good to be here.
Great to have you. All right, what an incredible theme of the show. We and the universe are one. Wow. Let's dive into this subject, maybe to start talking about duality and non-duality. And I'm going to turn it over to Jeffrey Fidel, MD, to talk about duality and non-duality and how do we get from one to the other.
Okay, Steve, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Non-duality is really not an intellectual pursuit. It's more of an experience. So the way that we get to non-duality is when our mind stops thinking. Non-duality is not something that we can learn with our intellect, and this is why it's hard for the Westerners to approach non-duality. It's a complete experience because once the mind comes in and thinking occurs, separations can start to occur, and those are called dualities. So if we call ourselves self, and we call the universe outside of us universe, that creates the duality because it says that I am self and the outside world is universe. When the mind closes down and stops all thought, then the pure experience of being comes in, and then in a state of complete no mind, we begin to learn ourselves that there is no self and outside, that it's all just a woven fabric, or what's deemed to be called a oneness. So it makes it hard for the mind, because the mind wants to know the answers to certain things. It's kind of like an existential dilemma. It's when we bit into the apple. There's so many things that describe the original sin of wanting to know why we're here, but the answer is simply that we're just a part of it. When we ask the question of why we're here, it can cause a separation, because the very mind that's asking the question was forged in the very existence we're woven into. And so just to know ourselves as that which is more of an experiential, to just know it without trying to think about it.
Can I ask you a question? My question is this: what was your first experience, or your most powerful experience of that experience of non-duality?
It's interesting. That's a great question. You see, I was always an intellectual my entire life, so I always wanted to know the answer, what the universe was and who I was. So it's really funny that this almost has happened to me, but
Irony.
but the way it had happened to me was almost my mind was producing thoughts. Like I said, I threw out my medications for bipolar, and I don't know if that's been disclosed.
Oh.
But this is how I came to this. Now, over the months, I thought that I was off the hook, that I cured myself of bipolar disorder. What had happened was my mind started creating thoughts of suicide and all these other thoughts that were very real to me at the time. And I just luckily had run into the teachings of the Tao Te Ching. And I found out that there's a way to connect into ourselves through our heart. And when the voices of suicide, I didn't know what to do because I didn't want to act out on suicide. But then I had to trust this other voice within myself. And I just continued to listen to the other voice within myself the whole time. And I guess that's the faith and the strength that I had, you know, through this whole process, was to trust something that I could not see within myself.
And what is this other voice?
This is the voice that comes from our heart, that can be heard. It's when the mind is quieted and we allow our attention to go to the heart area in pure silence. There's another voice that comes through us if we allow it to come through us, because and this was the scary part, was to allow something to come through, to give it space, to allow it to come through, because there's no separation between this self and the outside self. And then I just allowed and trusted in this for a long period of time. It took me months to actually accept that this was safe to do. And this is how I came to learn of non-duality, because I didn't have a teacher to show me this. I had to just trust that this was something that was real.
Your personal experience.
Yeah. And so in this way, I was forced into this. It was the only way out, was to go all the way in. I had no other option. Otherwise, I would have identified with my thoughts and my mind, and I could have ended my life at that point. So this faith of
So, I mean, I'm relating that to this other voice that doesn't talk with words. I'm relating that as like pure intention. Is that anywhere close?
It's just that I had to really unlearn everything I ever knew and almost admit that I knew nothing in order to accept this voice within. You know, there's a Buddhist saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
It's true. It's really
and
true.
And the teacher is us.
Right.
Yes.
This is what he means. There's another Buddhist saying, the way to heaven is through the heart. These are all different ways of saying that deep within every single human being is truly who we are, and that's just of essence of the existence. And we all find this inside of ourselves, not in our mind that thinks that we know something.
Yeah,
because that's just acquired knowledge from other human beings.
I call that our angelic being. You're calling it the heart. Similar.
And I call it something else. I mean, I call it our expanded self. So I've had the experience of, I mean, you guys know me for what, some of you for 5 years now. And I've been working on getting to having my mind stop talking. Who the heck is this thing that's talking to me? Who is that thing? And I got there, and now I'm able to quiet my mind almost on will. but I haven't had the experience that Jeffrey is talking about regarding having this voice talking to me. And I believe that voice, and I heard it described before many different ways, but when my expanded self is ready to speak to me, let me put it the other way, when I'm ready to listen, I will hear. And obviously
Yes.
I'm not ready to listen because I haven't heard him yet.
You
But
know, I've
yes.
had the exact opposite experience where I have never not heard the voice, the inner voice, the inner knowing, which is interesting to me because that's the way it's always been for me since the very earliest memory. So it's interesting.
Wow, that is.
Yeah.
Well, Jeffrey, also what I'm hearing is that you had this more or less a life or death situation with your bipolarism. I mean, you had a voice saying you should kill yourself, and that's scary. That's really scary. And that's like a brick wall. You came up against that, and you had to find a way to make a hole through that wall. And that, it seems to me, that was your motivation, and that pushed you into this other, I call it the mystery, the Tao, you call it the Tao. We all have different names for it, but it helped you focus, it seems to me, on not going. I mean, I used to say, I don't know where I'm going, but I know where I've been, and I ain't going back. And I certainly wasn't bipolar. I wasn't in your situation. Mine was just plain old depression. So, I mean, I have an inkling of what you're saying. I don't relate to a quiet mind, but, that's just me. But I think, and the reason I asked you that question in the beginning, what was your personal experience? Because I really like to hear what people's personal experience get out of their head and talking about principles or descriptions, and I want to hear the real experience of what changed them, what opened their mind, what presented a new way to look at something. So I want to thank you for being courageous enough to publicly reveal yourself.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think it's really, really fascinating what you're talking about. I'm writing a book called Age is an Attitude, and I'm studying a lot of material because I want to come from a very thought process about culture and change and changing our mind, literally, to live the life whatever we want. And some of the work that Dr. Mario Martinez is talking about, he's also been on the show, is that when you own the problem that you think exists, and you own it and become real in it, and then you can have a look at the opposite of that, which is the bipolar, the other part. And he said, then find experiences where you're valued, where you have empowerment, where you feel loved, etc., and go into those experiences and allow them to wipe out. Which to me is a little bit, I could be wrong, but to me it reminds me of what you did, in that you, rather than focus on the negative, you found a focus, if you will, on how you can get through it, which was just simply calming down and listening to your heart. The Greeks call the heart the subconscious mind. It's really interesting where the heart is in different cultures. But yeah, I'm also fascinated in what you're talking about because I think it's fantastic.
So how do you when we were talking about non-duality, how do we have that experience, since this entire Disney world, as I call it, is grounded in duality? I mean, as soon as I stop meditating, I'm back into Disney World. How do we?
Well, every moment of now it's available. It's always here.
Mm.
And this is, I guess, what Eckhart speaks. I don't know. Eckhart Tolle actually was a huge influence on, I went too far in, and this has happened to me similarly, but where was I going? So in every moment of now, this is available to us. It's just the only thing right now, actually, that's separating Steve from knowing this is the analytical or the thinking mind trying. Maybe there's some kind of desire to want to know something or trying to figure it out. But we come in and out of pure presence. When the mind stops for a little while, we're there, and then the mind will start to label things again. And like in your case, you might say this is Disney World, or come up with ideas of what this existence is, and who Steve is. Those are thoughts. When the mind stops and says, I don't want to know anything, if it gets quiet, I think people, when they meditate, they might be still enough to actually find this peace and just be.
Well, that's how I get to the silence in my meditations, is that I allow whatever comes up to come up in my meditation. And then as I allow it, it disappears.
Although sometimes in the quiet comes the downloading of information from the universe, where you get this information flowing through you, where you're not sure where it's coming from, what it's about, but you trust it. And I think there is time where people are so present with themselves in their now, and so allowing to receiving whatever it is from wherever, the universe, that it's just an amazing connected state of knowing, whatever that knowing is. So have you experienced that?
It's just that thoughts, what's creating all the suffering in the world, most of it today, is the identification with thought. What I learned inside of myself was that thoughts have nothing to do whatsoever with my identity. I evolved to think, and in fact, thinking is very helpful for me. It doesn't cause me suffering anymore. So what I am is just awareness, just a pure state of awareness that observes thought without attaching to thought. So most people that are depressed, they have thoughts in their mind that say, I don't feel well, I have to lie down, I don't want to do anything. That person is identified with those words in the mind, and then the whole being, hearing those words, thinking it's them, will then carry on those activities and lie down and not be able to get up. The thoughts will continue. The room can be perfectly silent and peaceful, but inside the mind of the individual can be chaos, because every single word and thought that's coming through the mind is creating tremendous suffering for that individual.
So would you say that's similar to the Zen monkey mind?
The Zen monkey mind. Well, to allow thoughts, when one attaches
to be attached to the thoughts, there's a difference.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. The Tao is one of my largest books of teachings that I utilize, but it says that the ego is like a monkey always looking around for the next thing to satisfy its desire, and it's written in this book, Let the Monkey Go. And what that's kind of saying is allow thoughts to just come and go, and not fall for every thought that it wants. And this takes the discipline to just, if there might be a thought, you know, I want to go out with my friends right now, even though we know in our heart it's not the right thing to do. But then if we're not disciplined, we listen to the thought, and then we don't listen to ourselves, and we go and we still go out anyway. And the next day we say to ourselves, well, why did we do that? So the discipline is kind of to let the monkey go, means to allow thoughts to just pass without us or actual being this acting out on every thought.
But can't some of those thoughts, you know, like this morning I had to get up really early, at 5-ish, and I do my walk to the beach because I had a business breakfast to go to. And while I was walking, that's when I meditate, because I just go into some sort of calmness. I can come back and not have seen or heard anything. It's like I love it. And this morning,
but hang on, Linda. I just want to interject something. So first of all, there's no 5 o'clock. That's a social agreement.
Well, that's okay. Whatever. But anyway, I had to get up, and I walked to the beach, and all of a sudden I got this amazing message. And it was, this could be the last chapter of your book. And it was the title. Everything was really clear. I was so excited. I couldn't wait to come back. So what I'm saying is that, to me, was a beautiful experience in a world of nothingness, and a clear message for me to continue with what I'm doing. And there's a possibility of what I could be doing in that last chapter, rather than thinking of it as something that I shouldn't act on, or something that, you know, what you're saying with discipline is, are you saying we should be thinking about every thought or just letting it go? Because to me, that was very powerful. It was like I'm just connected, and I got a very clear message of how I can work with this book to get more information out.
Yeah. So when we refer to ourselves as I, we usually know ourselves as this physical self, or the self that's under our mind's control. So
that's not my interpretation, by the way.
Okay.
I to me is our expanded self.
Yeah.
For my experience,
the AM, I am, the AM is this thing.
Right. But so for me at this point, the difference is when I used to think to myself that I am Jeff Fidel, and, you know, I used to have a religion. You know, I was brought up in the Judaism religion. And so I learned all these things from other people. So what was able to happen now is, when I say to myself, I just know that that's a conceptual idea. In fact, you know, I gets formed within selective cells within my mind. If somebody does a lobotomy on me, I won't be able to even utter these words, I, or even have these thoughts. But my intrinsic existence will go on whether or not I have or have not thoughts. My intrinsic existence goes on whether I was ever named or not. Whether even I developed an intellect, I always have an intrinsic existence. This cannot be taken away. So what remains for me, no matter what thoughts I have of who I am, is the awareness. And when I go to sleep, I lose my awareness. Sure, my mind can go into dream state again. I wake up and I'm aware again. So my intrinsic identity is just pure awareness. And in fact, the clinical definition of death is when we lose awareness. Someone deems the person to not be aware anymore, and then we clinically define them as being dead, you know, when they're not arousable. So from the person's standpoint that has died, they lost awareness, or even if they get knocked out in a fight, they lost awareness. And then when they come back, they're aware again, and then they start thinking about who it is they am, and then they can form the conceptual identity, or what's also called the egoic self.
So let me ask you a question. Do you feel more connected to yourself now, whoever that self is? Are you connected?
Oh yes, it doesn't change anything.
No, in
Oh
terms
no,
of,
I feel more connected because it's funny because when I was medicated for bipolar, which is just mind identification, the whole reason I suffered was because I was subconsciously protecting myself from feeling again. All the healing had actually happened when I allowed myself to go every place that I subconsciously protected in my life. And that meant that I was crying again. I allowed myself to feel heartbreak again. All the experiences that I had protected myself, subconsciously over the years, I had built layer and layer and layer so that I wouldn't have to feel, so I could be the macho guy. All these behavior sets that I learned, of course, I was able to live in the Western world and have the life, but on the inside, I had nothing. So really the journey inward was allowing myself to go to every single place that since I was a little boy, that I didn't want to go. All the way back to the very beginning. And that was my journey inward, to just totally start once again. And that's why it took a long time in isolation. I had to relearn society from scratch, really, because I was so in my own little world of what was going on and all the trauma that I had accumulated, and then just let it all go and then come back.
and
But this
so
is
do you, I'm sorry, do you easily navigate from that place and find a lot of joy and love and all those wonderful emotions that you can experience in a month your way now?
It's on his face.
It's
What are we talking about?
so
When
what
I first
love
saw
is.
him, I'm going like, oh my
Love
God.
to me before was different because subconsciously love was a very controlling entity. When I was in love, it was more of an attachment to the woman. And if the woman didn't treat me the way I wanted, then I would become angry. So my love it was all dependent on her. I was completely dependent on the behavior of a woman, to satisfy what was missing within inside of myself. And now what I understand love is, it should just be present with the person. That alone is pure love. To just look into somebody's eyes, no words need to be said, and just truly be with that person. And that's the difference.
And are you finding a lot of people to share this experience with in terms of your new way of living?
Well, right now, a little bit here and there, because at this point, what it is I'm trying to teach these things. Ideally, I'm going to go back to the medical community because my entire life has been in medicine, and without challenging, there's millions of people that are medicated for mental illness. I'm not here to say who's right and who's wrong, but from my personal experience and my journey of what I've found, this is how I came to know this, and so really what's happening to me at this point is I went through all these processes over and over again, so now I can teach people that are interested in going into themselves the methods that I utilize, and hopefully they'll come to the understanding that the present moment is where life occurs, and then there's the suffering. Just it's not that nothing bad happens to me. I'm like any other human being. I could lose my arm or what have you, but I just know that this moment's always the moment, and it just allows me to now just have a completely new outlook on the world and just accept things. Because what was not accepting the reality of what the world was my thinking mind that was rejecting everything around and wishing for something other than what was always there right before me.
Are you a physician?
Yes.
What kind of physician are you?
Radiologist.
Okay, and will it be easier now to accept your patient's terminal illness or things in medicine that you certainly can't control, and watching people in states of disease that you are not able to affect? will that change you as a doctor in terms of your ability to be compassionate and more present with people that you interact with?
Yeah, that's what it's all about. The most we can give another person is pure presence. So like you say, if someone's passing away, in fact, my aunt was passing away and she actually just passed recently. So the difference between how I was able to be with her was that I was just purely present with her. I'm not there as a doctor, like it's more just being just purely there, not as someone as an authority, but just to be purely in presence. And I was crying and I kissed her. I mean, these are things that I never would have done. The more intellectual, scientific person that I was years ago would not want to go and feel and be present and say, I love you. That would be protected behind the intellectualization of all and saying, I have to be strong and my aunt's dying, instead of just being silent and allowing the experience to unfold. And this is really the difference. And I think really medicine did toughen me up, unfortunately, and I had to break down that defense because I had a lot of difficulty dealing with all the trauma that went on that I watched. And the only way I was able to survive in these situations in the hospital was to create this wall, so to say, this defense mechanism, so that I was able to function in a state that I probably ordinarily wouldn't be able to. When people were dying in front of me, the anxiety, I froze. So over time, I was able to deal with traumatic situations, but by creating a defense mechanism, an intellectualization of the situation so that I can function. So it's really tearing down the conceptual view of the world and just being in presence with it.
I have a question for you. I wonder if you can elaborate a little bit when you talked about going inward and re-experiencing all the, I'll just call them dark places, for lack of a better set of words. And you were talking about letting go. And my experiences was I had to experience those and identify them before I could let them go. I couldn't just throw them away. I had to be with them and then let them go. And I'm wondering if yours was similar.
But so what are we letting go?
Whatever was there, whatever is blocking, whatever was being judged, whatever had a condition.
Right. So who's telling? You see,
well, you know, if you want to move on, if you want to not be in that blocked, dark place, then that the intention behind that is to, you have to illuminate this, and then you decide again, do I want this or do I not want this?
Right.
And then you can say, no, I don't want this. This
right.
is
So what's happening in my personal experience? What had happened was, for example, I couldn't forgive certain things that happened in my childhood. But who couldn't forgive? My thinking mind couldn't forgive. So when I was trying to forgive, I had other thoughts that said, you can't forgive that, not after what that person has done. So I went back into thought again, because who couldn't forgive? My perception couldn't forgive. By releasing those perceptions of being wronged was where I was able to go outside of thought and go all the way in. I ceased listening to my mind that was saying no, and I continued in. And that was the journey in, because the mind kept saying, how can you do that? Not after that. You cannot. And then I still went in. No matter what thoughts came to mind, I kept going in and experienced and shut my mind off and just purely sat with every single thing that I was afraid of.
Are you saying, Jeffrey, are you saying that when you say kept going in, are you saying that you allowed for the feelings to come up that you've been running from?
Yeah, I mean, in my situation, of course, it had to come to a crescendo, and that was, if not for the fact that I had thoughts of killing myself, I don't think I would have been able to do this. I had no other choice. I had read the teachings of the Tao, and there's a specific verse in there, and I put in my book of what literally saved my life, and it says to trust in your heart. And it was really this this particular voice, and I put it in my book of what allowed me to then listen to this inner voice and just follow it all the way through. Now I was, you know, this is so scary, and this is why I can see why people say that there's no cure for these states of mind. But I lived in what would be deemed as complete schizophrenic insanity for months. And that's the strength that I have, is I didn't go back to the doctor. In fact, I had thoughts that I was God's messenger for for months. I thought I was, and my mind actually created. I went to the beach and the clouds aligned in the sky. It all happened. This is how powerful thought is. I didn't know if I was going to have to Baker act myself. I almost did. But it's just, this is just what I had to do. I was almost saying that no matter what, I'll never take my life. I'm going to go through every single state. It's not going to happen. I'm going to find out what this is all about. And that's, I guess, in a way, I'm a pioneer in this way, to find out that now when I have thoughts of suicide, I just know that they're a thought. I don't want to take my life now. Whereas before, every thought that came to my mind, oh, I want to kill myself. Oh boy, I better kill myself. And this is really the states of mind that I lived for months.
Oh, so that's another question I had. Do sometimes the thoughts still occur to you and you just watch them? Like Steve was saying, you watch them come, you watch them go? Or are they gone completely?
Oh no, I don't. I just watch them come and go. They form and then they dissipate. I don't try to protect myself from thought. There's no defense mechanism whatsoever in any of this. It's just allowing everything to just happen, unfold. But I also understand that, like, this self, the conception of the self, there's no separation between the me or the I or whatever I'm going to call the Jeffrey and the outside environment. And I had to learn this. This was the learning process, and this is non-duality, is knowing oneself to be woven into the very fabric of whatever we want to name the existence, universe, existence, universes. We can name it whatever we want. But that's the humor of it, that now I know that I can't know who I am. You know, there's no idea that would say, oh, I got my answer. It's just that I go on like the rest of the existence that I'm woven into. And that was really the simple answer that I needed. I live in the moment, and it goes on, and that's it. And I don't claim to know any answer. I'm just a part of what it is. I don't know what it is.
The Tao, yeah.
The Tao, which is that which can be named, is not the eternal Tao. And that's really the first sentence, which is most powerful. Once it's named, it's no longer that. It's a conceptual idea.
Yeah, exactly. I am that I am. That isness.
So Jeffrey, what about the notion that you are the one, like from the Matrix? What about the notion that you are God and you have all the power and you creating all of this, and all of this is real and not real?
It's just, that would just be an idea or a conceptual idea. What is God? I don't know.
Well, it's you.
Oh, well, we could name it all. We could name the whole existence God, or we could name the whole existence universe, or universes, or whatever we want to call the whole existence. We could
it
put a
doesn't matter.
name,
It doesn't
but
matter.
everyone's a
Yeah.
part of it.
Mhm.
But once we name it, that's when the duality is created. So when everything's not named anymore, and then we're just that. Because any name is going to reduce it into a concept of our mind, and our mind is a part of it too. So for my mind to say that it's that, everything that, this is even scientifically proven, everything that makes up my mind, carbon, hydrogen, iron, those elements can only have been formed in the existence that I'm woven into and completely and separate from. So if my mind creates an idea that, oh, this is the answer to this, is that it's universe to the second power. That very mind that created that idea was formed in the universe itself. Every thought is a part of it too. There is no separation, even when we think it's a part of it. So,
well, what if Jeffrey, this is a holographic experience, and it's not real. It's just a movie.
Well, it's a movie I'd like to continue in. Whatever it is, I don't know what it is, but I just know that it happens now and it goes on. Whatever it is that it, what it is, it's unfolding right now. This is the beauty of it right now. Every moment of life is just that. And if the mind doesn't want to accept it, then it can create a thought that it should be otherwise. But whether someone's thinking about that it should be otherwise or not, it doesn't get, if I'm at work and I'm wishing that it's 5 o'clock, it doesn't change the reality that I'm still at work, but my mind might be creating visions about, going out and having fun. But the reality is I'm still at work. My mind is now creating a thought that I'm somewhere else, but it's still now.
Well, yeah, but Jeffrey, part of this whole thing about the mind and that I'm experiencing is that we have bought hook, line, and sinker that this is all real. And what if it isn't?
Well, I mean, if we get hit by a car, there's no denying what's going to happen. Or if we stop breathing.
Jeffrey, people get hit in a car in a movie. It's not real.
Oh, I'm saying if I stop breathing long enough, I can guarantee you that I'm gonna cease to have awareness, and then I'll be declared dead. So all I am is I'm just that awareness. And the day that I'm no longer aware is the day that someone, maybe a doctor, is going to say, "Oh, he's no longer aware. Let's bury him."
Mm-hmm.
But
you don't stop being.
So that we can understand this a bit more, for you to have that decision or that thought that you want to take this to doctors, that was a thought. So did you have to go into what you call duality to actually realize that who you are now can go and be that teacher? And you're living in the moment. I'd really like to be a fly on the wall when you're doing that teaching. Because having cured myself of lupus, I worked with doctors, and it was wonderful and it was interesting. So what happened? You were saying that thoughts come and go, but you had a thought that you would like to teach this to doctors. So, and you've taken on that thought. So has that created a duality in you, or you're working one with, or?
Oh, well, there's still the surface world, and that's the dualistic world. I still have to be Jeffrey Fidel and talk to people.
About the Disney World?
Yeah. I'm still watching the madness going on in the world. I'm watching TV and CNN, and I'm just like, this is insane. That world still exists. And I still have thoughts, but who's thinking, I don't know. But whatever, you see, whatever conceptual ideas I had since I was a little boy still remain in my brain. I'm calling it a brain. I don't, but that identity still remains. It's just that, and this is how I can carry on in surface life and not be yelling at the top of my lungs, "We are the existence." That none of that's happening. It's just that I also know, in addition to the surface life, you know, computer, Jeff, all the naming of things, that there's also just the unnameable existential happening that's unfolding now in the present moment. And yes, it, like you say, it's my personal goal, because you know, the story that I am, that I was a doctor, that story is still there. And after I learned this, because I'm a doctor and an intellectual as well, I want to bring this back and say, now wait a second, the intellect is a useful tool, but there's just certain things that it just can't do. And that's kind of what I want to share with the scientists and the doctors. You know, the intellect is useful, but understand the limitations of it also.
That reminds me of that famous quote attributed to Einstein, but it was really somebody else. The intellect is a good servant, but intuition, or this mystery, is the gift. And we have created a society that and ignores the gift.
Yes, because we don't even have to think about how our brains work. They just work. It's almost like our thoughts are taking credit for the very intelligence that's behind what's even allowing me to speak right now. I don't have to, thank God, I don't have to go to sleep and like think about how everything's going to just work out. I mean, then I wouldn't be able to, I have to think about how my heart's going to pump, how my brain's going to work, how,
well,
that's the humor of people that, you know, myself included, that used to have so much pride in my intellect. But now, like, I almost laugh about it, because I know that, I know the intelligence behind whatever it is. I don't know the intelligence, but there is something that I can't know, and that's fine, you know.
Has this significantly changed your interpersonal relationships? This new relationship that you're having with yourself?
Yeah, it definitely has. People don't know me as the same person that I was. I'm completely changed as an individual. My parents, for example, they don't want to hear any of this. Not a word. So I have to just accept that.
But do you have access to people differently than you did before? Are you more interested in connecting with your parents in a different way now than you did before? Are you more interested in connecting with other people more deeply or differently now?
Yeah, it's more just being present with a person. And so, I mean, it's a huge change, because I used to argue with my parents all the time, and now I just let them go. I just know, okay. And this is, and Eckhart speaks of it too, is the discipline to not engage. He says, if you're enlightened, then you can hang out with your parents for a week. And he's right, because the parents know you as a certain way, and they must be thinking to themselves, well, how come he's not arguing back? This is not fun.
Well,
I don't like this situation. I'm going somewhere else to my brother, where now we can argue, and like, this guy Jeff, he's boring now. He's not engaging into the argument.
They programmed you in a certain way, and now they're experiencing you completely different. And I don't think I would be incorrect by saying that you may have been known before as a doctor with a big ego. I can see that as a possibility. And now you are a doctor that's actually approachable, and someone that has a huge heart and can look at anybody in the eye and be with them. I mean, I felt your energy when I first saw you, and I'm going like, wow, this MD is not the usual MD.
Well, Yeah, when we look into our heart, we see that every single human being is the same, and this is why I understand when someone is angry, they're just suffering inside, and they're unfortunately they're putting it out on the world. Their internal suffering is coming out, because anyone that's full of love and acceptance inside, there's really no need anymore to do that anymore. I don't feel any. I used to walk around like angry all day. It was a drug for me, that adrenaline, that, you know, I needed that. But now it's like I can't even be angry at a fly. Of course, if someone like you know, tries to hurt me, then I'm going to defend myself like any other human being. But I just don't have that same rage that I lived with my whole life. That's the difference, and that's why our own inner state of consciousness is so important, because when people find this inside of themselves, then there will be less reason to attack other people or other countries or all the other chaos that's happening in the world. It's almost, it's unfathomable when I watch what's going on. It's pure chaos. I try not to watch the news too much of it. I'm just amazed each day. It's almost like it's more insane than the next.
So are you writing a book? Have you written a book? Is it published?
Yes, I wrote the book. It's called I Unnameable. It's on Amazon.
Okay.
And that book's like a memoir, pretty much, of the states of mind I had to endure.
Oh, okay.
It kind of briefly describes my personal story, and then the second part, I try my best to explain what non-duality is, but it's hard to explain in words. Non-duality, it's more of a pure experience of being, when the mind just stops.
I love it. It's hard to describe it with words, because words are in duality.
Well, you know, words are reductive. That's the problem. In other words, there's no reciprocity.
There are no non-dual words that you could use to describe it.
There's no reciprocity between a word and what an existence is, and this is why science is running into problems. I could call something a black hole, but that word black hole will never recreate what something is. That's why even with me, I could call myself Jeffrey Fidel and a whole laundry list of conceptual ideas of. But if I took all those words, there's no reciprocity. There's no taking language and getting back existence. It doesn't work. It's almost like an analog to digital conversion.
Words are an interpretation of what is. That's just the nature of that beast.
So this is like, I would like to end the show like this. So we've been talking about this for years, actually. So humanity is going through this phase 1, which is, and I'll be short, which most everybody is focusing on the outside. Just, this is the short version. And phase 2 of humanity is where we begin to understand that really where it's at is within. So when people begin to go inside, which is what you just described throughout the entire show, which was very beautifully done, by the way.
Yes.
What do you think? What's next? Is there a phase 3?
Well, I think what you said is extremely important. This phase 2 is so important. I think the rest of this humanity is going to be dependent on what you just said, because if people are going to continue to look outside, then there's going to be blame and hatred and revenge, and this is what we're seeing. There's no guarantee that this planet survives. The existence goes on, whether we...
Yeah, the planet will survive.
No matter what happens, existence goes on. You know, I won't be aware of it if we blow ourselves up. You know, then that's going to happen, and then it just, whatever this is will go on, whether or not. I'm just hoping that people do start to understand that their inner state of consciousness is so vital to prevent this from continuing, and then just to be present and allow ourselves to love each other. But it has to come from we have to love ourselves first before we can love another person. And this is really the shift. It has to be seen. This love inside, and then the outside world becomes love. When whatever this inner state is, the outside becomes. And that's really the shift I personally experienced, was the whole change of that, of anger to finding something within myself, and then that's the way it became. So I'm hoping that people start to realize there is a huge shift going on right now. There's no denying it, and hopefully it continues in this way, but there's no guarantees.
This is wonderful. Very cool.
Yeah. So just one more piece. I can't let you all go without this one more piece. So so this thing about the I am, and you talked about it at the beginning of the show. So I think I was like interjecting that I believe the big I is really the expanded self of me, who I really am. This is not who I really am. I feel that this is just an avatar. This is just the AM part, and I know this could be understood as very mindy. Is that a word?
It is now.
I'm trying to create new words.
You just made it one.
Okay.
We'll go with it. I understand what you're getting at, mindy.
We'll go with it. And so when we're talking about it, it's interesting that the theme of the show is we and the universe are one. And you know, we've been talking about that a lot in San Francisco and Boulder and other places, this oneness thing. And I don't believe that's even remotely possible on a massive scale until each and every one of us resolves the separateness between the I and an M. Because I think the fight that we keep experiencing in the external world is the fight that's going on with every human being internally within themselves. And that's it.
Okay.
When we resolve this conflict between the small me and the bigger me, which is something that I am definitely working on right now, until that's absolutely clear, and there is love, and there is team, like oneness, like the two of us are working together, not against each other, then I believe it's possible to have what our theme is, which is we and the universe are one. Not until then. And I stick to it for now. So, wow. What an incredible show, ladies and gentlemen. And I must acknowledge Jeffrey Fidel, absolutely. Not only that he's extremely loving and interesting and very engaging, and you have this ability to, so I think whatever it is that you want to do with other MDs, it's going to be very easy for you, because you are now very lovable. Like when I saw you the first time, I'm going like, I experienced the light, the energy, and it's like, just tell me whatever you want to tell me and I'll listen. You know, and we went through 45 minutes of technology work to get this show on with Jeffrey, because he had issues with his computers, and you did not give up. And you're an amazing human being. So thank you very much for being on the network.
Thank you so much.
Showing all of us what's possible.
Jeffrey, I specifically really enjoyed your clarity. Thank you.
No, I appreciate it. It was wonderful being with you all on the show. It was a wonderful show, Steve, and the questions and just the whole panel, the way the interaction. I think it's a great show, and I think it's a good message, and hopefully the message spreads to find these things within ourselves, like you say.
Yeah. Amazing. And thank you for all the cast members. You're all fantastic and amazing, and love you all.
Love you.
It's been. I always say this show is the best. It's always the last show is the best. Thank you all. So see you, everybody, on Living Consciously TV, always on Friday evenings at 7 o'clock Mountain and 9 p.m. Eastern. Thank you for being here, and just keep watching.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thanks, Steve.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.